and that's because it's mainly perceived as being more exclusive than matte paper. So also due to the fact that what is actually on stock in the world markets of paper is that would be the glossy type.
Okay, and next question coming up. How come that sometimes mistakes happen in instructions? For example, in some recent technique sets, there was a piece shown on the current state of build, but it was added in a later step.
That's a very good question, actually, and I'm glad that we're having that here, because this is something that I mainly do look into. And of course, the more complex a model are, the more elements that you use, the more chances there are to place something wrong. And also, we are actually dealing with the people who are working on these building instructions, so mistakes do happen. And when they do, of course, it's very annoying, but hopefully we learn from it from time to time going forward. But in a specific case like that you mentioned, it could be that we did have actually in a proofreading a change to a building flow. And then when we did that change, then for some reason we didn't get the above element overview, the one that we have up in the left corner of above the step number, that we haven't gotten that updated as well. So things happen, unfortunately, but yes.
Thank you so much. Next question. Which was the most difficult set to make instructions for so far?
It's not necessarily the big steps. If we talk about what is actually hard, then maybe also the 4+ and juniors, in trying to find out a language that actually makes it able for them to understand, and also trying to get a language for adult audiences, because they don't necessarily need as much simplified stuff as lower age marks does. So it's not necessarily that a big model means a difficult building instruction. It could also be the very small ones that could pose a difficulty.
Yeah, and to add to that, in regards to the adult audience, we have you fans that are really, really good at building Lego and are good at the very big models. But as Thomas mentioned in his presentation, we also have adults that buy from passion. So they buy that Lego set because they like the Porsche. And they are not, it might not be a simple build for them. So how do you cater for these low affinity builders together with the high affinity builders? That's actually what's complex.
Cool. Next question coming up. Have instructions ever been changed after a set has been released? From user input, for example?
Yes, they have. If we've discovered any mistakes that had influence on the building flow or the building experience, then we would, of course, change the building instruction, rectifying it, and then producing it for the markets again. So yes, sometimes we do need to change a building instruction after the product has been launched.
Cool, and then we have the last question, so you have to discuss who's going to take this one. How many people are working at the building instructions department?
That would be you, Kim, right?
Yes, I could say overall in our area, virtual assets and building instruction experience, we are 60 people, where half of the people are working primarily with building instructions. Those doing the steps, those doing the evaluation of the building experience through the instructions. And then you can say a lot of other people talking about, for instance, the virtual elements, designing the steps into digital elements into the steps, they are sitting 14 people internally and then twice as much externally. But those doing exactly the building steps, they are around 30 people doing that for the whole portfolio program.
Thank you so much, Kim, Nana, and Thomas. It was a great look into your apartment and your world here in the Lego company. Now, I want to tell the audience a little about this fantastic house that we are living. So, if you don't know, the Lego house look a little bit like this. We have divided into 6 different experience zones. So, the first one I'm going to talk about is the upper one. This is what we call the Masterpiece Gallery, or the Keystone. This is where we exhibition some of the A4 MOCs, my own creations. And then underneath, we have this hidden brick, the black brick here. This is our history collection. This is the basement. But these colored ones, these are 4 different zones. And right now, these are the play zones. Right now, we're in this yellow zone. And the yellow zone we use to mirror our emotions in play. And what better environment is this to introduce our next guests? Because we're doing this live session partly because the Skærbæk Fan Weekend was sadly cancelled. So we're gonna talk to these guys over here. These guys are Stefan and Thomas. And for 2 years, the Lego House has been working closely with you. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. It's we've been guests on the Lego House since the very first beginning, since when the planning was still in progress and nothing was built yet. So we joined each other for quite a while now.
Right. Thank you for coming and welcome to the Lego House. I think we need to explain to our audience that you represent the Skærbæk Fan Weekend. Isn't that right? And we are here to talk about this emotional roller coaster. But first of all, could you tell the audience about what Skærbæk Fan Weekend is, and maybe who you are and what you do with the Skærbæk Fan Weekend?
Of course, a pleasure. This is Thomas. I'm Stefan, and we are the steering team of the Skærbæk Fan Weekend. And for those who don't know what it's all about, in 2005, the Lego company itself started to do a fan event, and it was quite a success. They did that for 10 years, and then we started to take over the event. And since 2015, it's a pure fan event driven by A-Folds for A-Folds. And so this was the date when we changed the name to Skærbæk Fan Weekend, which was just the right name for that event. And it's I like to say it's an event for the Lego fans where A-Folds from all over the world join each other, and with a focus on just networking, on coming together. We do have 2 big exhibition halls where the people can show their really incredible MOCs, and there are also visitors, but it's the visitors they are allowed to see the MOCs. It's not our focus to have more visitors than the Lego World in Copenhagen for sure, but our mission is to bring the fans together. So this is what always was the spirit of the Lego Fan Weekend, and even furthermore the spirit of the Skærbæk Fan Weekend. And this is what we are trying to improve and make even better for the A-Folds.
That's a lovely mission.
Yes,
Now,
definitely.
we want to talk to you a little about this whole situation, about the Scareback Fan Weekend being cancelled. It's been an emotional roller coaster, and I want to ask you how that past week have been for you guys, and what your thoughts have been.
Well, I think roller coaster is the perfect term for the emotion and what happened. You know, back in April, we've seen all the countries have been to lockdown, and you know we've been quite relaxed because you know there was about half a year between April, that situation, and end of September. So we thought, okay, just let's wait and see, and we just continue to work as nothing happened, because at that time we didn't know how it will turn out. Yeah, you know, the restrictions have been loosened a little bit, so we thought, oh, yeah, we can do something at least, and we continue to with our plans to make at least a tiny exhibition. At the end, it was impossible to have any visitors. And a couple of weeks ago, there was that regulation here in Denmark that allowed just 100 people gathering together, and that would even not be enough for the efforts, even without visitors. And since a lot of countries were not allowed to enter Denmark, we had no other choice than to cancel it, and it was really heartbreaking. Yeah. Because you know there are so many people who really love to go to Scareback, and they meet people just this one time in a year, and so it was a hard decision, but at the end it's safety first, and we absolutely had no other choice.
This was going to be my first time at Scareback, and sadly it's not going to happen, but later time, another time. We have a last question for you guys, and is, how do you see the future of this event compared to where you are right now?
Honest answer, I have no idea. In the past, I always refused to think about the event of next year before the actual event was closed down. And so by now, it is a little bit different, but no one can really predict or say how the world will look like in 1 year. So we are doing what we did the entire last year. We continue with our plans. We just say, okay, there will be something, and we will try to get the most out of it, and to be able to welcome as many efforts as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely to see that you still hang on, and best of luck to you. I really hope this is going to come again sometime, because it's a lovely vision you have. Now, thank you so much for joining us right now. We do have time for another break, so you guys take a refreshment, take a glass of water, a Brigantino again, and we will be back at 4 p.m. So until then, see you soon, and tune in again. Hello and welcome back from this little break. Welcome back to those who were with us before the break, but also a warm welcome back to those who just joined us now. My name is Emil. I'm your host today. I'm also what we call a play agent here at the Lego House, which means I'm an expert in playing with all our guests here in the Lego House. Right now, we have our third section of this virtual fan day here in the Lego House. And we invited a very special guest for this. This next guest is Bjarke Schönwandt. And Bjarke, you are an expert in customer perceived quality. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, Bjarke, we want to hear a little about you, and we want also to hear a little about your work. So, and also I get to hear that we have 400 people watching this live session right now. So just to put a little pressure on you, Bjarke, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as you said, my name is Bjarke Schönwandt, and I'm 49 years old. I live in a small town called Dresden. It's only about 15-20 minutes away from here. And then I live together with my wife, Inger, who also right now is working for Lego. And then we have two kids. My oldest, Erik, is 18, and my youngest, she just turned 16, and she's away on a boarding school this year. Both of them are more or less in what I have been told is called the dark age when it comes to Lego. They used to be very enthusiastic Lego builders, but right now they have other interests, as it is quite natural for teenagers, I guess. But I'm just as a father hoping that they will soon start getting back into the to working with the playing with the Lego bricks. I guess that's how it goes once in a while. My background is I'm a master. I have a master's in chemistry from the University of Aarhus. Inorganic chemistry has absolutely nothing to do with Lego bricks, so it was a windy, bumpy road that made me come to Lego for about 18 years ago, and I've been here ever since. In all 18 years, I've worked with quality, so that's what I'm used to. I usually say when I get to work, I work with all the crying kids, and then when I get back home again, they're lucky enough a little bit happy. But so far, so good. It is really a pleasure working with in Lego and working with this consumer perceived quality. I'll show you a little bit about what we do, but just a little bit of a fun fact. When I was a kid, I also played a lot with Lego, and I also grew up with the Lego Space back from the late 70s, beginning of the 80s. And yes, they are by far the best Lego bricks we have ever made. But when I was a kid, one of my big dreams was actually to come work for Lego and then test build all the Lego sets. And I'm almost there right now. I cannot choose myself what sets to build, but I quite often test build Lego sets. It's not as fun as I hoped for because you have a deadline, you need to do it by this or that time. I don't get much sympathy about that when I talk to friends, but still, it's really a dream coming true working for the Lego company. So let's go into the hard business, so you know a little bit what we are doing. So if you take the next slide. Now, what I'm working with is what we call keep the consumer happy cycle. So when we look at the volume that we are producing, the billions of bricks that we push out of our factories every year, and the millions and millions of sets that we are producing, sometimes failures happens. And our very good colleagues in consumer service, they take care of that part. So if kids have missing pieces or broken pieces or whatever it is, consumer service is handling it, making sure that the kids get new bricks, and then they can continue the building experience, which is great. Then what we do in my team is we sit and look at the data from consumer service. So we look into the database. Are there any trends? Are there anything we should act upon? How big are the volume of the different issues? So that also puts a sense of urgency to it. And then we go to development or to the operation side to make sure that they then fix the issue so we can get good products out to the kids. And that's why we call it keep the consumers happy circle. So that's what we're doing. Now, one One thing would be just to fix issues, but the real thing is to then make sure they don't happen again. So if you take the next slide, it's just to say that we are not embarrassed in the Lego Group when we do a failure. I mean, failures are bound to happen. I get worried if I don't see we make any failures, because then something is hidden somewhere and we haven't discovered it, so we cannot fix it. But every year, or bi-yearly it is now, we do what we call a State of the Nation. A half year or a year-end report saying what happened, what are the things that are causing issues, where are there learning opportunities, and how can we improve our general product quality. So that's really, when we boil down to, that's the essence of what we're doing, making that message throughout the organization, making sure that we take learnings from the mistakes that we do. And if you take the next slide. Now, sorry, but we like graphs. So you could also say what I do is making graphs. I know it has not to do with Lego bricks, and my wife hates me for saying, look at this beautiful graph. Could we have that on the wall in the living room? And usually she says no. But what we do is making these graphs. And what we are comparing a lot is what we call the consumer complaint rate. So we measure it up against our sales. So if our sales is increasing, we should also expect to have an increase in the absolute number of complaints, as long as the ratio between complaints and sales don't change. And as you can see, it fluctuates throughout the years, because there is one little thing that corrupts our numbers once in a while. That's what we call the average piece count. So the bigger sets we are selling, the higher is the risk that we make mistakes as a company per set, or that the consumers are making a failure in building the set. So that's why we keep track of those two numbers together. And if you then take the next slide, I think you more or less know the answer. And if you click again, so what are the main driver of our complaints? 86% of all our consumer complaints are missing pieces, elements that are lost. They are out there, laying under a couch, in a vacuum cleaner, or maybe built into the stomach of a model. We don't know, or they're still sitting in the factory. Now, if you look at this big portion of missing elements, and if you take the next slide, I tried to sort of approximately drive it down a little bit, so you know a little bit what we are working with. So, if you look at this distribution of issues, and don't kill me if the percentages are not exactly correct. It's rough distributions. But the first distribution is what we call production failures. Sometimes production mix elements. They mix what we call similar looking elements. And you should be able to see a couple of them. So similar looking elements, when things are happening, things are going fast, by accident, operators can mix content in the boxes they're using, and then we send out the wrong element. We're trying to improve it. We do all we can, but we are also only human beings working in the production area. And then to the next part, missing minifigures. It's interesting enough to see that Ninjago figures and stormtroopers tend to be more missing than policemen and firefighters. Though the machinery we're using are exactly the same. But we also know that these little guys are extremely attractive, or they have a tendency to jump out of the box. Sometimes we are a bit scared that maybe one day that army of Ninjago figures and stormtroopers will be around the corner, and the revenge is theirs. But I do believe that they got lost in the building process. Sometimes it's not known why they're lost. It could be the little brother that took off with it. It could also be that it got stolen at school, and then the only way is to claim it missing. For me, it's just things that happens. Consumer service try to balance, so the one that are real missing are sent out to the consumers. But there is definitely something there where we can see that behaviors in the consumers are also then driving complaints. And then the last part, what we call systematic building mistakes. That's where we can see in a certain step in the building instruction, consumers are misunderstanding the building step and are picking the wrong element. It links a little bit to what they have in the problem in production with similar looking elements. So if we have too similar looking elements, there's a chance that consumers will pick the wrong one and have a missing piece. Now, and that's a good part why I'm not sitting in consumer service, because I will just say, no, you have to stay focused, make sure you have a clean table and, put on gloves and shut off your phone and stay focused on the building experience. But we know that you can get distracted. Somebody could yell your name and you're looking up and then you'll pick the wrong element. And then it's still us to blame. So we'll send you our new element and we then need to figure out how to make our building instructions even better. So that's the stuff we can do with those systematic building mistakes. And then we have the last portion, the big portion, randomly missing elements or lost in the carpet elements or whatever lost elements. So that portion, we don't know why they're lost. We are always looking out to see if there's anything new trends, but so far we haven't succeeded in really nailing that part. Yes, and I think if you take the next slide, we are more or less ready for questions.
Yes. So I think we have the first questions coming in. The first one is here for you.
Okay.
And is, now it is perceived quality.
Yes.
Come with your, we have the next question here, the real questions.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have the impression that some pieces don't fit exactly the same as apparently identical pieces. What is the threshold for an acceptable fit between pieces? Is every single piece tested, or do you sample production batches?
I can guarantee you that not every single element coming out of the mold machines are tested. That would be a huge volume of tests we have to do. But whenever we approve a mold, the mold that is creating the bricks, all the measurements are checked. More measurements than what you probably would dream of. Also measurements that don't really, say, interfere with your building. So we might want to make sure that the steel is perfect. Then in running production, we are checking some of the some measurements, and it's not all the measurements, but we take some of the key measurements that we know that if something is wrong with the mold, if something is wrong with the process, that measurement would change and get outside of spec. Now, I don't know, so in that way we have a running sort of change, and then depending on the element, but as a rule of thumb, every 8 hours an operator is checking the elements coming out of the machine, making sure that nothing has happened, and that everything is still in control. Now, I don't know exactly what elements they're talking about that don't fit exactly together, but we do sometimes do changes to our elements, either because we have problems in the molding process that we cannot get them out of the mold, or we have other technical issues with them, or we have had issues that they're not strong enough, or the other improvements that we need to do on elements. So you might have elements that are slightly different, even though they look similar, but that could also be the case. I don't know exactly which one they're referring to.
That's a good answer. Now, already next question is coming in for you, Bjarke. Is it possible that some plant-based Lego pieces are structurally sound but are perceived/received less favorably compared to normal Lego bricks?
Not the ones that we are producing currently. So the chemical composition of the current plant-based bricks we have is completely identical to the petrochemical version. So there shouldn't be any difference. That's the source of the carbon is the difference, not the chemical composition. But we are on this journey. So we have done changes to bricks within the last 2 or 3 years, and we have introduced some new materials that we see have a better chance of becoming sustainable in the years to come. So yes, we have done some element changes and some material changes, and they have a different sound to them. They have more a pluck sound than a pling sound. but they still build the same. They still have the same functions, still have the same strength. So I think it's more. I mean, yeah.
That's reassuring for sure. And can I add, I like your sound effects. It's just make a presentation better. Now, next question for you, Bjarke. Do you feel that a master in a chemical field has helped you at Lego?
Whoa. Yes. Because you learn so many things when you take a master's. I mean, you learn how to take in new knowledge. And you learn how to read technical articles and take out the essence without going, very sort of slow and thorough through. So the art of reading a huge book in 2 hours and get out the essence, you have to do that if you want to get past university and still have some fun in the weekend. So I think in that perspective. And then another thing that really have learned a lot is when you I guess as it is in chemistry and physics and some of these more fields where you do experiments, you have a hypothesis and then you go out and see if your hypothesis is watertight, if it works, and then you also try to see if you can counter-argument your hypothesis. So that way of working as a researcher, where you don't just because you see obviously this seems to be the right answer, you try to work around and see, can I prove that it's not right? And that has really helped me in our analysis of data, because when we started looking at all of this consumer feedback and looking at all the missing elements, we went out in production and we were yelling at the production guys constantly about missing pieces, but we couldn't the numbers wouldn't add up. And then we found out that there were certain patterns that showed that maybe it was these systematic building mistakes that were driving it. So in that way, we could prove that it's not only production, but also development that are influencing our missing elements. And that was, I would say, is the background I have of, looking at a hypothesis and see, could there be other ways? How can I prove it wrong one way or the other? Yeah.
It sounds like people should be lucky to have you around at Lego. Now, we have a new question coming in. Yes. So it says several customers have complained about the Lamborghini Sian due to the color variations of some elements in this set. What is the Lego Group doing about that?
I'm so happy you asked me that question. And I would have been so surprised if nobody had answered that question, because by far that is the biggest issue we have currently. There's a number of different things that are wrong with the Lamborghini, or that we're working on. We have one element that is out of spec. So when we work with production and we work with suppliers, we need to have specifications. So they need to have a certain sort of room that it can maneuver within. And one of the elements, and it's most predominant on the tail here, there we have a brick where the color pigments are burned. So what we have found out is that they've stayed for too long in the mold machine, in the what we call the screw, the part that is pushing the material forward into the mold. And there the pigments couldn't stand, so they burned. And that's a mold construction that was wrong. We haven't fixed the mold, but we cheated. So we managed to move the mold to a much smaller machine, so the time in the screw was reduced dramatically, and therefore we could get the elements within our color spec. So that's great. So that part has been fixed. Now, another thing we have on the Lamborghini is a little bit more complex. And therefore, I would need to get this one.
Yeah. See you coming in with some papers.
Yes. And sorry, it's because it's a little bit hard to explain. And I hope please bear me with if it becomes too technical. But it's just to let you know that we are really using a lot of energy into this field. So we have this you could say measurement system for colors. Now, our material department, when they're approving new batches from suppliers, they are allowed to say yes from oh, there shouldn't be 5 down here, it should be 4, sorry. Between what we call 5 and 4.5. That's a way to measure color that is used in a lot of industries. Now then, production also need a little bit of tolerance, so when they mold, they are allowed to, due to the processes, to change the color down to a 4. So then we have